Success doesn't start with action. It begins in the mind. The most powerful habit of successful people is their ability to craft a clear, unshakable vision of where they are going. They don't wake up and simply hope the day goes well. They begin each day with the end in mind, driven by a mental image of the future they are building. This vision isn't vague or general. It is specific, intense, and detailed. It's so clear that it becomes a compass, guiding every decision, filtering out every distraction, and aligning every ounce of energy. When others are drifting or doubting, they are focused, because they know exactly what they want and why they want it. Without vision, people perish. With it, they rise. But a vision without discipline is just a dream. This is why successful people don't rely on feelings to determine action. They operate on discipline, the rarest and most valuable trait in a world addicted to convenience. Discipline is doing what must be done even when you don't feel like doing it. It's waking up early when the body begs for sleep. It's saying no when temptation whispers yes. Discipline is not glamorous, but it is powerful. And it is always private before it becomes public. Nobody sees the early mornings, the lonely sacrifices, the quiet consistency, but those are the roots of greatness. Successful people build habits, and those habits shape their destiny. They understand that emotion is fleeting, but structure builds empires. It's not about how they feel in the moment. It's about who they are becoming through their repetition. Alongside, discipline lives the habit of radical accountability. Successful people do not point fingers. They don't shift blame. They don't play the victim. They own their choices, their time, their outcomes. Even when it wasn't their fault, they take responsibility for how they respond. Because responsibility equals power. As long as you give excuses, you hand your control to someone else. But when you own your life fully, you reclaim the authority to change it. Accountability is not harsh. It is liberating. It says, I am not waiting for someone to rescue me. I am not depending on luck. I am not expecting a break. I am the one who moves the needle. That's the mindset. That's the standard. And that's what separates the average from the exceptional. This inner framework, the vision, the discipline, the accountability, is not built overnight. It is forged in silence, in solitude, in struggle. It requires a person to become brutally honest with themselves, to confront the areas they've avoided, to reject excuses and embrace standards. Success is not about talent. It's not about resources. It's about mentality. The world sees the results, but they don't see the hours spent sharpening the mind, mastering the habits, and protecting the purpose. Every move a successful person makes is anchored in this mental foundation. They do not hope for success, they prepare for it, and in that preparation they build something unstoppable. This is why when you study the most successful individuals, you don't just see different results. You see a different mindset. They think differently, and therefore they live differently. They understand that the most dangerous limits are the invisible ones placed in the mind. So they break those limits daily through intentional thought and disciplined action. Their minds are not cluttered with doubt. They are sharpened with clarity. They don't waste energy defending their past. They invest energy building their future. Every single day is a chance to strengthen this inner structure. Every decision is a brick. Every sacrifice is cement. And over time, they don't just succeed. They become unbreak. Greatness is not built on massive leaps. It is constructed through the relentless execution of small, consistent steps. The individuals who rise to the top aren't necessarily the most talented, nor are they always the most intelligent. They are simply the ones who keep showing up. They take consistent, intentional action while others hesitate, procrastinate, or wait for perfect timing. They understand that waiting for everything to feel right is the greatest illusion. Conditions will never be perfect, but action must still be taken. While others spend years preparing to begin, successful people begin, and in doing so, they build momentum. Momentum is the hidden force behind progress. It is created through repetition. It's not about speed, it's about direction and persistence. Even the smallest step forward carries more power than 1,000 intentions left unrealized. Success is not earned in one massive breakthrough. It is earned in the hundreds of ordinary moments where a person chooses movement over stagnation. They embrace the process rather than obsess over the outcome. They know that excellence is not a switch to be flipped, but a muscle to be trained. It's in the decision to start before feeling ready, to persist through boredom, to move forward when there is no applause. Because those who only act when inspired will always be at the mercy of emotion. But those who act despite resistance are the ones who eventually command results. Successful people don't negotiate with excuses. They don't give themselves options when it comes to their standards. They move because it's required, not because it's comfortable. That mindset separates them in a world where most are paralyzed by indecision or distracted by the pursuit of ease. They understand that mastery lives in monotony, and they commit to doing the ordinary things with extraordinary consistency. And while they are moving, they're also mastering something far more valuable than money, time. They don't manage time, they dominate it. To them, time is not something to spend. It is something to invest. Every minute has a purpose, and every hour has intention behind it. They don't drift through their days hoping to be productive. They design their schedule like an architect, with structure, priorities, and discipline. They know what matters most, and they build their time around it, because they understand a simple truth: you can make more money, you can find new opportunities, but you can never reclaim wasted time. Time lost is life lost. That's why successful people guard it with intensity. They say no to what drains them and yes to what builds them. They are not available to every request, every distraction, or every opinion. Their focus is narrow because their mission is clear. They treat their calendar like a contract. What gets scheduled gets done. They don't leave their priorities to chance or their progress to luck. They track, review, and adapt. They are intentional with both their peak energy hours and their recovery. They work hard, but they also recover smart, because energy management is just as vital as time management. They know how to say no, not out of arrogance, but out of alignment. Every no to distraction is a yes to growth. And while others are caught in the chaos of busyness, successful people move with quiet precision, doing fewer things but doing them better. They don't glorify being busy, they glorify being effective. Their time is not just filled, it is focused, and that focus compounds over time. When you align your time with your values, you stop living reactively and start living powerfully. You don't waste minutes on gossip, on complaints, on mindless scrolling. You channel your time into learning, building, and becoming. That's how a person with the same 24 hours as anyone else ends up miles ahead. It's not about time, it's about intention, and that intention must be protected at all costs. Successful people are not just punctual, they are purposeful. They wake up with a plan, they move with clarity. They end their day knowing they moved closer to something meaningful. These habits of consistent action and ruthless time mastery are not glamorous, but they are the scaffolding that supports every successful life. They are the habits that build character, momentum, and ultimately, legacy. Most people are stuck in cycles of distraction, reaction, and stagnation, but successful people create cycles of focus, execution, and elevation. The difference is not in opportunity, it's in discipline, it's in daily choices, it's in doing the hard things when no one is watching. That's where results are born, that's where champions are made. Not in public, but in the quiet mastery of each moment, one step, one decision, one day at a time. There is a reason successful people never stay stagnant. They are in a constant state of evolution. Their hunger for growth is not seasonal, it is a lifelong obsession. They are students of life, not just during convenient times, but at every stage of their journey. They read, they listen, they reflect, they question. Every experience becomes a lesson, and every failure becomes fuel. They don't just collect information, they absorb wisdom. They aren't attached to being right, they are committed to getting better, because they understand that the moment you stop learning, you start decaying. Growth is the oxygen of their success. It's not optional, it's essential. While most people reach a point where they think they know enough, the successful remain curious, they ask better questions, they dive deeper into themselves. They upgrade their thinking just like others upgrade their devices, frequently and intentionally. They have trained themselves to love the discomfort of learning, because true learning isn't about affirmation, it's about transformation. And transformation only happens when you're willing to challenge what you think you already know. That's why they don't just learn, they unlearn. They're willing to dismantle outdated beliefs, habits, and assumptions that no longer serve their purpose. They know that every new level of success requires a new version of themselves. What worked yesterday may not work tomorrow, so they stay light, agile, and adaptable. They don't cling to identity, they evolve through intentional growth. They know that holding on to a fixed mindset is the fastest way to become irrelevant. The world changes, people change, and the successful change with it, not out of fear, but out of purpose. Because to them, growth is not a reaction, it is a responsibility. This habit of constant learning isn't confined to books or formal education. It shows up in how they observe the world, how they listen in conversations, and how they reflect in solitude. Every moment holds a lesson if you're awake enough to receive it. They pay attention, not just to the obvious, but to the subtle cues that others ignore. They are self-aware, brutally honest with their weaknesses, and open to feedback even when it's uncomfortable. They don't defend their flaws, they dissect them. And in that self-examination, they find the blueprint for improvement, because to them, ignorance is not an insult, it's an opportunity to improve, to stretch, to rise. They also understand that learning is not always exciting. It's often tedious, frustrating, and humbling, but they do it anyway, because while others crave entertainment, they seek enlightenment. They invest in learning like others invest in pleasure. Time spent learning is never wasted, it's multiplied. A single insight can collapse years of trial and error. One break through idea can shift the entire direction of a life. That's why they never stop feeding their minds, and not just with what is easy to digest, but with what is necessary to challenge their thinking. They stretch their perspectives, even when it's uncomfortable, because they know comfort zones are the breeding ground for mediocrity. This mindset of growth creates a sharp contrast between the average and the exceptional. Average minds resist new information if it contradicts their current world view. They protect their comfort, but exceptional minds welcome the challenge. They look for friction because they know that friction is where sharpening happens. That's why successful people are never done. They are always becoming. They understand that personal growth precedes external growth. You don't expand your life without expanding your mind first. So they pour into themselves daily because they are their most important investment. In the process, they become more than just skilled. They become wise. Skill is developed through repetition, but wisdom is born through reflection, and wisdom is what gives them the edge. It's what allows them to make better decisions, lead with clarity, and navigate chaos with calm. While others are reacting to life, they are responding with strategy. They've trained their minds to pause, analyze, and choose with precision. This level of mental sharpness doesn't come from chance, it comes from consistent learning and deliberate practice. They have become lifelong learners not because it's trendy, but because they understand that to lead, to grow, and to sustain success, you must evolve faster than your environment. So, while others plateau, the successful rise. While others grow comfortable, the successful stay curious. They know that every level they reach is not a destination, it's a checkpoint, and every checkpoint demands a new commitment to growth. It's not about knowing more than others, it's about becoming more than you were yesterday. That's the real race, not against the world, but against your former self. And that race is won by those who are humble enough to learn, brave enough to unlearn, and disciplined enough to keep growing no matter how far they've come. In a world overflowing with noise, distraction, and pressure, one of the most powerful traits of successful individuals is their ability to master their emotions and protect their energy. They have learned, sometimes through pain and repeated setbacks, that external success is impossible without internal stability. No matter how talented or driven a person is, if their emotions are out of control, their results will eventually collapse. That's why emotional discipline isn't just a soft skill, it's a survival tool. The ability to respond instead of react, to stay grounded under pressure, to remain centered in chaos. That's real power. The ones who win long-term are not those who are loudest or fastest. They are the ones who are calm, composed, and conscious, even when everything around them feels like it's falling apart. While most people allow their emotions to dictate their behavior, successful individuals have trained themselves to be the master, not the servant, of their emotional state. They don't give every passing thought or mood the authority to shape their actions. They've built an inner filter that separates emotion from execution. They still feel, they are human, but they don't let feelings hijack their focus. If they're angry, they pause. If they're overwhelmed, they breathe. If they're uncertain, they reflect instead of react. That emotional pause is not weakness. It is strength in its highest form. It's what keeps their standards intact when stress tries to lower them. It's what helps them speak with clarity instead of chaos, and it's what allows them to lead themselves when everything around them is unsteady. This level of emotional control doesn't come from pretending. It comes from awareness. Successful people have studied themselves. They know their triggers. They understand their patterns. They've done the inner work required to break cycles and build new responses. They don't run from discomfort. They face it, learn from it, and rise above it. Because they understand that ignoring emotional pain doesn't eliminate it. It multiplies it. So instead of burying what they feel, they process it with maturity. They use their emotions as signals, not shackles, and over time, this awareness becomes armor. It doesn't make them invincible, but it makes them unshakable. They can be in the middle of storms and still operate with precision, because their foundation isn't based on how they feel, it's based on who they've become. This emotional mastery goes hand in hand with the intentional protection of their energy. Energy is their most sacred resource, and they guard it with focus and intensity. They don't let just anyone have access to their attention. They know that energy leaks through people, conversations, environments, and even thoughts. So they're selective. They cut off toxic influences. They distance themselves from negativity. They don't entertain drama, gossip, or chaos, because every minute spent in low vibration is a minute stolen from progress. They have understood something most people never realize. You can't do high-level work with low-level energy. You can't build greatness while constantly being drained by meaningless distractions. So they curate their environments like sacred ground. They surround themselves with excellence, with positivity, with challenge. They create mental spaces that allow for clarity. Their routines are built to fuel, not deplete, their energy. They protect their mornings. They schedule recovery. They know when to go all in and when to step back. That's not laziness, it's strategic, because burnout doesn't come from working hard. It comes from ignoring your limits, and successful people know their limits well. They don't chase everything. They pursue only what aligns. They don't fight every battle. They pick the ones that matter, and because of this clarity, their energy is not scattered. It's concentrated like a laser. Focused energy is what drives results. It's what turns action into achievement. They also practice emotional detachment from what they cannot control. While others are consumed by things outside their influence, the successful stay locked into what they can impact. Their attitude, their habits, their choices. They don't allow rejection, criticism, or comparison to derail them. They use it as feedback, not identity. Their self-worth is rooted in purpose, not public opinion. They have learned that you can't build peace if your validation depends on others, so they validate themselves. They affirm their mission. They anchor themselves in truth, not trends. That emotional independence becomes their edge, because they're not shaken by applause, and they're not broken by silence. They move with quiet confidence, not arrogance, certainty. This emotional intelligence and energy awareness become their shield and sword in a world that constantly tests patience, clarity, and focus. And while the outside world often praises hustle, speed, and noise, the truly successful understand that the real game is played within. It's not about appearing strong. It's about being so deeply rooted that no external storm can shake what's inside. That's the kind of strength that can't be faked. It's earned in moments of solitude, reflection, and deliberate inner work. That's what separates those who rise once from those who rise and keep rising. So, when you look at the habits of those who achieve greatness, remember it's not just what they do, but how they manage themselves internally that sets them apart. Their discipline is not just physical, it's emotional. Their strategy is not just tactical, it's energetic. Their growth is not just intellectual, it's spiritual. They've built more than success. They've built stability, resilience, and clarity. And in a world where everyone is running faster, they've learned the secret. It's not about running harder, it's about mastering yourself first. That's the real victory. That's the habit that holds all the others together.